The first law of relationships is that you can only be loved as much as you love yourself. You want love from your mum and dad or whoever raised you, and if you didn't get it, you're going to constantly look for that validation because it's a human need that we have.
Before you listen to today's episode, I'd like to ask you a huge favor. So many of you listen to this podcast, but you're not yet subscribed, potentially on any platform. The more of you that subscribe and share this with your friends, the more that we can bring more content to you, more knowledge and wisdom and amazing guests. And right now, this is my passion project. So I'm not making any money from it. And it does take a lot of my time amidst supporting my incredible clients inside the Lovely Radical Academy. And I get so many messages of lives that are being changed because of having access to this exciting knowledge and support and conversation and community. And by simply clicking a button to subscribe and to share, you're part of that impact, which is pretty cool. So take a moment now, hit subscribe, share this with your friends, and I hope you enjoy today's episode.
Tell me, since there's two of you, who you are. I'll get you to introduce yourselves, so Lachlan, you can go first.
Kat, I'm Australia's youngest shadow work facilitator. I got into this coaching world and men's work space when I was 15 years old on a 3-week journey out into the bush where I had to write a philosophy about life. So it's been a very interesting last 6 years of this journey and coaching people and running retreats and doing one-on-one work and creating businesses. So I've had a lot of fun doing it. That's who I am.
It's been a wild journey to watch, yes.
Yeah, it's fun.
And Liv?
I am Liv Gargioni. I am a nurse and also a mindset confidence coach, and I run group programs for women, helping them to dive deeper into who they are and who they want to be and giving them the confidence to go and do that.
And you're the founder of Dr. Fit Wellness.
Founder of Dr. Fit Wellness as well. Got to mention that a little bit.
Lots of things. Love that.
Just a few.
And I would really love for you to tell a little bit about your journeys to what you're doing now, because you're both young and very wise in many ways in comparison to a lot of people in their early to mid-20s that I know. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about what led you to where you're at now. So again, Lucky, if you want to give us a little backstory.
I'd say that the biggest thing for me was a permission piece from my father, is that he was someone that never went with what everyone else did, you know. So he was a business owner, he worked hard, and he had a really high level of a personality trait, openness. And so that created my own perception of the world in wanting to just learn more and understand why. And I think in a world where we have set ideas and set ideologies, it's often, you know, seen to be as wrong to question the narrative. And so for me, I was like, well, who am I? Why am I the way I am? You know, why don't I fit in with everybody else? So, you know, I was a competitive athlete, a competitive gymnast growing up, and so I never quite fit in school or a gym. And finishing up, it was like, well, let me go on this journey and figure out who I am. I don't want to go to uni for 4 or 5 years and do a degree and spend 80 grand to just go make 80k a year doing some job. Like, no, I want to do shit. I want to live life, right? And I saw some random guy called Kato doing a Facebook Live, and next thing I know, I'm in a room doing breath work with 100 people, and people start screaming, and I'm like, what the fuck am I in for right now? And after that, I went full into the cult and signed up for everything.
Yeah.
There I am.
Cults are the way to go, right?
They are. Culture.
Culture! I love that with an Australian accent. It's just like...
Culture.
Right. And Liv, tell us your story.
I guess for me, my self-growth journey would have started when I think I was second year out nursing, and I was experiencing burnout, and I started off just meditating. And it's funny, like, how starting off doing something that you don't really know what the purpose is or what you're actually doing can lead you down this path. However, that's literally how it started. I was unhappy in my job, and I was just unhappy with life. And I was like, and I had a moment where I was like, there actually has to be more to life than this. If I continue to live my life unhappy like this, that's not it, right? And so I got a life coach for a little bit, and then went out of that, and then ended up moving from Tassie to Queensland, went through a big turbulent time with my partner at the time. We broke up, still on that kind of self-growth journey, and I ended up in the cult, right?
Cult of personal development.
I ended up going to this networking event one day, signed up for the personal development course. Best fucking decision I ever made to invest in myself in that, because since doing that, I've shifted my perception on things, taken accountability, and I'm now living the life that I want to live. That's incredible.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that you both mentioned spiritual modalities that you kind of had as a gateway, whether it was breathwork or meditation. And
Yeah.
I know that I've been through the spiritual world of self-development. That was my gateway as well. Like, it was yoga and meditation and breathwork, and then all the things that lead onto it, and you know, dancing around a fire and crystals in your bra and all the stuff. Like, you name it, I've done it. Turns out most of it didn't actually get me where I wanted to be.
What?
That's ridiculous.
Wow.
You mean putting crystals out to the moon doesn't help you make money? Well, it can.
Maybe it does.
Do you mean it doesn't actually heal you?
Yeah.
What?
I've slept with an amethyst on my chest for multiple nights in a row to try and like heal myself.
See, what you have to put it inside of you. I recommend the Kundalini.
I've heard.
Kundalini.
Thank you,
Kundalini.
Sensei.
Yeah.
And the reason we're all having a bit of a joke right now is because we've all been through that world as well, and I think it's not like there's one level that you get to that's better than another. Like, it's all so relevant and it's all super powerful. However, for me, there was an aspect of I'm doing all these things and I'm still not, you know, name the thing you want, happy, wealthy, you know, healthy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so eventually I had to go deeper into something more uncomfortable, which I know a lot of people tend to resist that come to us. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts on that progression from the spiritual or just more like fluffy side of self-development into what works?
So I want to speak into a psychological side of this. Is when we take into account personality. You know, personality, the study of how we are as humans. We want to categorize ourselves and box ourselves, right? And isn't it interesting that the idea of spirituality is to be open to what is and to take on new beliefs. And often, though, people who are really spiritual are very low in openness because you offer them a new idea and they're like, that's not the way it is.
This is a spiritual rule.
Yes, this is the rule, you must follow it. And it's like,
Guilty.
it's like, how is that spirituality? Because you're going against what the actual, what the ideology of what spirituality actually is. And at essence, it's to be open and receive to new aspects and new ideas of what the world is. And so and what you'll notice is so many spiritual people will look down on people who make money because they're like, that's not spiritual. And it's like, go fuck yourself. I mean, don't say that.
I mean, I love you.
I love you, and would you like to make money?
And it's like, they're like, oh, you know, I want to help people. That's a big spiritual thing. I want to help people grow. And my core belief is like, okay, great. Well, you could help maybe 3 people. You know, help people every now and then. But if you make money, then you can help 1,000 people. And it's like, it's just this closed-mindedness in my belief. And if we can change the way that we perceive what spirituality is, which it constantly is evolving, right? But for so many people that want to be woo-woo and want to be spiritual, like all of us are super spiritual.
Yeah.
We've done more woo-woo shit than most people who will. Yeah.
We know how to release DMT in our brain for free.
Yeah, exactly. And
Without
call
any
I did it by accident the other day.
I know,
didn't
me
realise.
too. It's weird.
Call on dead people if we really want to.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
it's all there. And I think that you mentioned the boxing, and we do love to put anything and everything in a box, and that's not necessarily conscious. It's more just the brain just trying
It's
to be...
the brain. It's an easy way to measure.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you brought up money, because I was just having a conversation with my mom about this, and my dad's always been entrepreneurial, and he's had many businesses, and he's never made money. Well, he's made some money. And it's that same thing, and it was what I used to say. It was like, I just want to help people. And the beautiful thing about people who want to help is that they actually want to help themselves, because the reason they've identified a problem is because either they've been through it or they're in it.
Yeah.
And so what would you think is a great way, or something that was great for you, to step from that comfortable box of I found a tribe, or I found a thing that feels nice and makes me feel cushy in my problem, and I get to maybe help some people by telling them about it, to getting to a level where you've actually cleaned the container out? What's your experiences with that progression?
I think for me, it was definitely doing the mindset course that I did, and it was the pieces of accountability for the things that had happened in the past. And what I recognized was that the problems that kept repeating themselves because they were unconscious beliefs that I wasn't aware of. And they were problems that I'd get stuck in for like weeks on end, and I would be like, why is there always something going on just when things get good, blah, 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 whatever the story. And I'd had enough of that. It's like, I just don't want to, if I don't clear out those unconscious programs and beliefs, then I'm going to continue to do those circles for the rest of my life. For what purpose would I want that? So actually taking accountability, responsibility, and actually going to the unconscious stuff, getting a coach, investing, and then clearing the container took me to that place of like, okay, now I get to move through stuff really quickly. And it's not to say that it's done, because there's still stuff that comes up. It's a continual journey. This is the thing with personal development. People think they do the work and then it's finished. It's a continual journey, because things will come up when you're ready for them. And you can't really see your shadows. So
What?
You can't see your shadows. Other people can. So when you think you've done the work, there will be something else, and that's okay, because you have the tools and resources to move through it a lot quicker and easily.
And it's more fun as well.
Yeah.
I think, and that was something that before I had my breakthroughs, and one of them was the call that we did together. That was a massive moment. I don't even know if I've ever told you that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was like, I'd done some work around things, but because everything was heightened in that moment, and we did that process and whatever magic you did, we went on a journey, and it was epic, because like you said, other people don't see your shadows. Other people see them and you don't. And when you can have someone just draw it all out of you and then take you all the way into the darkness, it's like, oh, I've been to my own depths, like what else can I do? And what I didn't expect is that like I say, empty the container, because that's how I felt. It's like I don't have all of this weight of the past anymore. Like I still know it was there and it happened, but it's fine. And that, from where I was and the person that I was, like catastrophizing anything that happened, to like, I would never have known that feeling was available. And I'd love to know, like, what were your experiences moving through that journey?
Personally, like, what was the breakthrough?
What was the breakthrough moment? Or the significant ones?
I think my biggest thing was probably the expectation from my family about, and like the judgment piece. And I remember doing ECT at Master Pracker at Prac. I don't know who my partner was. I just remember, like, you know, stepping in the position of my father and going, and I went back to when I was like maybe 9 or 8, and I was at a gymnastics competition, and I just remember standing in the body of my dad and looking at my son, like looking at my little boy and going, fuck, I'm so proud of him. And like just like crying in that moment, and just recognizing how powerful that was for me. And you know, I think for a lot of young guys as well, they just don't ever get that love or validation from their father or from a male role model in general. And so it's like we wonder why this world is so struck with, you know, dating problems and whatnot.
Everything's heightened at the moment.
Everything's heightened, but like young men don't know how to give love or receive love. So anyway, that's my experience.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up because I heard you recently talking into the masculinity piece and this whole label of toxic masculinity, which I, in my thoughts, is just another box.
Yeah, it's all
And
boxes.
I think men and women can be toxic masculines because really it just seems to describe shitty behavior or the lack of actually building that foundation and that identity. And I'd love to know, like, what do you guys do to continue to build your new identity? Because as you said, it's ongoing. And
Yeah. I guess there are moments where I feel certain emotions come up, and I think I have the awareness to recognize things and sometimes where they've come from, yet I would still go probably to Lockie or someone outside of myself to look at it from a different perspective, because I need someone to actually just call me out and go through it and coach me in that moment. So it's still that accountability from other coaches and other people, even though I am a coach myself. I feel like that's super important.
I think that just on that, it's the biggest. No one's healed. No one's done it all.
Yeah.
There's only people that are just a little bit in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's why I coach as a 21-year-old male. I've coached 40-plus-year-old men and women.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not because I've experienced more of life. It's because I understand and articulate and can help people process how their emotions govern them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, yeah, you don't need to go and study for 4 years to make sense of this. It's like you just show up at men's circles or women's circles.
Yeah.
You're not giving therapy. You know, you're not doing anything like that. Not with that label anyway.
Yeah.
So, no coach is perfect, right? And that's the whole idea of what happens with pedestaling.
Yeah.
It's just I actively try to just be so blunt and so transparent.
Yeah.
I had a client call yesterday and we're sitting down. I was like, you know, your life's gonna change after this. And I was like, and he's like, yeah, man. I'm like, no, like everything's gonna change. And it was like I was like warning him. There was like a part of me that was like, oh god, his life's gonna fucking change.
I know. It's like, I don't know if I want to do this to you.
Yeah. So
And it's great.
ignorance is bliss sometimes. In regards to me and what I think I do in regards to furthering the development, you said masculine.
Yeah, or
feminine
more like
development?
your identity and how that, like, when you're reaffirming your own identity.
That's a
as you
great
move
question. What reaffirms my identity?
Because you get to create it and design it and build on it.
Yeah, I'm still designing mine. A dark femme.
I think everything that I'm doing at the moment, my drive, how I get my human needs, etc., reaffirms my identity. Like a big part of me is my mission to help make change, and also at the moment it's to make money and create financial abundance. You know, that's who I am right now, and I know once I've created that abundance and wealth, it'll be creating a huge nationwide platform which is going to help thousands of people. So I think what I'm thinking right now is that I've just got a deep level of certainty in myself and what I'm doing, and people get lost in their identity. Like, I don't know what my identity is, I don't know who I am. And it's really the lack of certainty in themselves. Because I feel like you don't really need to know who you are fully if you've got this level of just love, worthiness and certainty in yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, at the end of the day, I am still 21. What I'm going to do over this next 80 years is going to change 50 times.
Yeah.
So, it's just constantly evolving.
Yeah. And certainty, like knowing you can do something that you didn't think you could before, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, just core confidence. And there's Alex Hormozy who said recently, you don't become confident by screaming affirmations in the mirror.
What?
You become confident by
I'm doing it wrong.
building an unbelievable stack of proof that you are who you say you are, and you have
Yeah.
to outwork the self-doubt, and
Yeah.
you just hit the nail on the head, right? You get to actually just keep doing things that you are unsure that you can do to build that certainty.
Yeah.
And you touched on making money.
Love making money.
Yeah, me too.
It's fun.
And I'd love to hear both of your past money stories, and if it's different to now, because I grew up in a society or community of rich people are evil and money is bad and all the things, and when I was able to change that, I've been able to help a lot more people because I've made money to support my own health and ability to show up, and then to be able to support them to do the work. So are you aware of your money stories from before?
100%. My money story, I think, growing up was that lack mentality, and like I don't put blame on my parents because everyone does the best with what they can with the resources they have at the time. However, I remember growing up and we'd go for swimming lessons, and then afterwards we'd get McDonald's, and my parents one day said, "Oh, we don't have enough money for McDonald's today, so we can't go there." And we were like, "What? No!" And so
Is that how it works?
as a 7-year-old, dressed my sister up and went to take her to the top of the driveway to make money and dance to make money so that we could have McDonald's. So
Little entrepreneur.
However, that was the money story I grew up with, in that more of a lack mentality, and I really carried that for a long time. And I think recently I went through quite a lack money experience as well, and it was really challenging in that moment to continually be like, money flows, blah blah blah, and when you're in those lack moments, it's like, it's really uncomfortable to still hold that higher projection of money still coming to me, money always flows. Yet now I feel I'm in a place where I have a really great money story. Money's always coming to me. Through multiple stories.
And I kind of love that you even just used affirmations there, because they are great.
They can be.
They really are,
yes.
and they're great for those quick reframes. That's how changing my own money story started. It was just like, anytime I had a bill come in, I'd just be like, oh, it's going out, it's coming in, it's going out, it's coming in. Like, whatever it was, just to quickly challenge that spiral of lack instead.
Yeah, from a money perspective, I grew up watching my parents grind. Just absolute, like, 70, 80-hour weeks constantly. Like, that was their life. Like, I was really lucky. I went to a private school. And so I was surrounded by wealth. I was surrounded by guys that would just get given money and would just get, like, bought $60,000, $70,000 cars, stuff like that. So, like, I created a really good relationship with money around saving. I got a job when I was 13. I was always selling stuff at school, GoPro gear, not drugs. Everyone's. I was always doing stuff. Like I was funny when I was in grade 11 and 12. I was coaching on the gymnastics team that I was also a part of. So that was fun. Yeah.
So you've been a coach for a lot longer.
I've been a coach since
years.
I was 13, yeah, pretty much. By coming out of all that and moving into this space, the biggest thing I find with coaching is you're selling yourself. And so it's not like you're selling a product, is you have to believe in yourself to actually sell yourself.
Yeah.
And it's why so many coaches fail. It's so why so many coaches don't succeed. They just don't have that belief. Being young, that was a huge, it was imposter syndrome for me, thinking I could tell people what they wanted to, what they should do. And I remember it was on Facebook and I saw a comment from Jacob O'Neill, who's a prominent figure in the community on the Gold Coast in men's work. And someone commented on a post saying I wouldn't get coaching from someone younger than me. And his response was, it's not about the year, it's not about how many years lived, it's about the experience you've had in those years. And at that moment I went, I've done more in my life than most people will ever do. And so that reframes so much. And then it's really, as I've just gone and worked with a 53-year-old man who spent 15 years in the military, 15 years in the fire service, his son's older than me. And again, it's not about your age, because you're not everyone says life coach. It's like, what is a life coach?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I reframe it. I'm like, no, I'm helping you figure out your shit.
Yeah.
People ask me, what do you do? I solve people's problems.
Yeah.
You know? So that was probably my big money story, was thinking I couldn't make money because of my age. And now I've just done another really good month. So, yeah. It's good fun.
I love that.
Yay.
And I know for me, when I came into the world of sharing what I could help with, the one thing I'd been like binging on self-development and motivation and listening to all these people from like America being
What's
like,
your why?
you can do all these amazing things. I was like, yeah, so I did. And the thing that they didn't mention in all of that learning was what might happen with all the people who are currently in your life when you start improving, growing, sharing things in a different way, speaking in a different way, whatever it is, right? And we kind of call it tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand, Australia, and I think the UK.
Tassie. Yep.
Yeah. What was your experiences as you decided to launch yourself as someone in service?
I definitely lost a lot of mates, straight up. I remember beginning of 2021, I did the Tony Robbins 5-day challenge. It was great. It was actually phenomenal.
Yeah.
I remember that was the first time I started getting on socials, and this was before. No, this was as I just signed up with Cato, and I remember doing videos and putting it on my Instagram for the first time and like preaching all this shit. And I just moved into a new place. I'd moved out of home, and one of my best mates that I went to school with, he came over, and he didn't talk to me in like 2 weeks since I'd done it. And I remember standing on the balcony, and I was like, how you going, man? What's going on? And he just was a little bit quiet and got into it. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, this isn't you. This is Cato. So what do you mean? It's just, I'm growing and I'm like learning all this stuff. And he's like, bro, it's a fucking piece of piss. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, hearing that from a person you really respected and that you like loved and cared about, that cut really deep. And it also hurt. And I was like, well, what am I doing? I'm moving away from people. And the way Cato framed it to me at the time was that your frequency is evolving, and this was huge for me at the time, and now I'm like, this just makes sense. Yeah. It's like everyone is here right now. Like you've been vibrating on this frequency, for similar for your life, and all of a sudden you've just hit this got all this new information. It's just pulled you up to this new level of being, and those guys are gonna pull you back down. Those guys are gonna keep you there, and you just got to keep doing what you're doing. All right, they're not ready for that yet, and they'll do it in their own time. So definitely, that was a big thing, and just going to an all-boys private school when everyone's really pretentious, often really pretentious. I got a lot of shit talked, especially about NLP, which is really funny because it's like they're like referencing stuff from the 80s. And I love when people make their assumptions and say
based on minimal data,
and the fact that it's been used in the Australian Army, and there's reference multiple times for that. Just a lot of people talk shit, and especially when I get the whole idea of when you start talking about trauma, that is a very dense and a very specific topic, which you should have a reasonable amount of knowledge around it to be able to, I guess, talk about anything. And it's also just out of people's model of the world for anyone, if you haven't done your 4 years at uni and done all the things, that it's like, that's ridiculous. You don't know your piece of paper. It's like, well, I've read all the same fucking books they have.
I've also been through it and I got out the other side sometimes,
Anyway, so that was my experience with tall poppy syndrome.
I think for me, it was definitely previously to doing the mindset and the NLP, I'd already showed up on socials, and I think I'd gotten over that, doing stories and that kind of judgment around that, and I just went, well, I actually like doing it, so that was fine for me. I think after doing NLP and changing my social media and recognizing that some people that had previously liked my posts, commented, supported me, were no longer liking, commenting on the stuff that I was putting out. That went through my mind and was like, oh, do they not like this version of me? And there's that piece of holding on to that old version, and you're like, no, but I love them. And yet now, like, I'm still friends with these people and they actually still support my growth. So, like, and there are other people that have also fallen away. And the thing is, like, I've just come to the realization that that's going to happen, and it's happened in the past in my life anyway. People fall away as I grow, and I don't know, it's like the seasons. It's like you're a deciduous tree, I think that's what they're called. And it's, as the seasons go, your leaves fall off, and then you're a naked tree, and then you'll start growing new leaves and flowering and blossoming, because you just keep on this journey. And it's a lot of just accepting that sometimes some people will come with you, you can't make them come with you, and some people will stay where they are. And that's okay.
I love that. And I love that you have that mindset, and I love that you had someone to kind of give you that frequency piece as well.
Totally.
I think I stumbled for the first 3 years of business, like confused, like super confused. I'm like, I'm doing something that
So
saved
amazing.
my life.
Yeah.
Like I was running a health business at the time, and like literally saved my life, and was helping all these, you know, millions of people around the world and all the things. And I was just like, why are people being so mean? And I'm hearing these stories about me. I'm like, I don't get it.
People love their problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Cosmic cane slots.
This is fun. So, let's go there. Why do people love their problems, Lachlan?
Because it's more scary to make the changes to go where they want to go than it is to actually overcome. It's more scary to overcome your problems than it is to go where you want to go. So they stay in their nice little bubble of shit. And they also get off on it. They love it, right? Because they get their human needs from it. They get certainty from it. They get uncertainty from it. They get significance. I don't know if you've ever met a really depressed person. And obviously it depends what's going on in their world. But like, I've known people who have multiple group chats for support, and I've known a number of people who feel like they would lose the love and connection if their depression went away tomorrow. And I remember asking someone this. I was like, if you woke up tomorrow and you weren't depressed or anxious, what would happen? And you're like, the look on this person's face was like, holy fuck. No, just and
It's not possible.
so the biggest things you get are significance and love and connection, but you get the certainty of that happening. And it's like, oh, I wonder why the body would manifest these things to keep you where you are. So Caroline Elliott, who wrote the book Existential King, talks about how people love their problems, and it's because they get their human needs from it. It's why most of the world why there is a mental health crisis, because we don't get our human needs met in the right ways. We get certainty from going out or scrolling on social media. Right? We get the uncertainty from going on social media. We get significance from going on social media. We get love and connection from going on social media. And it's like, we wonder why there's a fucking shitstorm that goes on. And they're just some examples. There are a lot more, like drugs and drinking and casual sex and Tinder and anything you can imagine.
And video games and
Like they all add to this shitstorm. And it's like, when you break it down, you go back to like, what would it mean to actually be a human? And it's like, I love looking at those YouTube videos on Instagram or TikTok, and it's like, I want you to build a chicken coop with me and raise lambs and cows and make a garden. I'm like, I'm fucking in. Let's do it. And I send it to my girlfriend all the time, and she's like, I'm in. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Most people would be in. I've actually had that recently in my inboxes. I've been reading the Case Against the Sexual Revolution by Louise Perry, and it's a fantastic book, and it's super challenging to read without getting really angry, but I've been talking about it a bit on socials, and the amount of women who are in my inboxes being like, I don't want to be sleeping with men all over the place. Like, I don't want this, but it's the only way I get any kind of connection, because whatever, name however it's happened, but has happened with men and women, is that men now don't even, in many cases, bother trying because of things that have happened or stories they've heard, and then women are now having to exploit themselves to get that love and connection or the significance or the certainty and so on.
It's definitely,
yeah. And you touched on as well, like if you were to get better or resolve the problem, like what would you lose? And I had multiple chronic health issues, and I was in communities, and when I got better, I was like the devil. It was so odd. I was like, guys, I resolved the problem. I want to learn how. And like,
people are like, what? You can do it a different way apart from Western medicine?
You mean hold on. You mean to tell me that for about 11,000 years, roughly before the Ice Age, there have been cultures that have developed practices that actually help people learn, and we're going off 100 years of medical data versus 11,000 years of medical data?
No, Lockie, but we have to sell people drugs
cool.
to make them better. That's the only
keep them
way.
coming to therapy, so keep them talking about their problems until they've talked about their problems so much that they're actually more suicidal than when they came in.
Jesus.
Then I just took personal responsibility and resolved it all.
Can I ask about this? How long did you spend in therapy? Like, how many different psychiatrists did you see?
I didn't go into traditional therapy until 2020.
Yeah, wow.
Mainly because
You're a mismatcher and want to...
Shut up. Well, I mean, for so long I didn't recognize that there was a really deep problem. It wasn't until I was 29 that I really started feeling suicidal.
Yeah, wow.
And it was over years and years and years of just being like, I'm going to go out and live the way everyone lives and do the thing and be myself. And I just there was never anyone who wanted to date me. And then I got sick, and then I got my significance and my connection and my, attention from having health problems. And it was still just go on and on and on. And so it got to a point where, I was running to the ground. It was some significant things that happened just before 2020 for me that took about 6 months to really hit home. And I was like, I am running a business where I'm supporting people at the stage. So I was like, I need to make sure that, like, I know I'm in shock right now and I don't want to fall apart. So then I got into therapy. And she was lovely. She was a lovely woman and very holistically minded. She was not going to put me on medication. Yet after a year, it was like we were just trying to find more and more trauma in my past, and we actually identified trauma that I'm not even sure was real. And so for 6 months I didn't talk to my family because I was convinced that my family were horrific humans who hated me and who never cared about me, and none of that was real. And so
it's so difficult though, like finding, like, we've got Medicare, you get six rebated psych visits or something like that, which is amazing. And I say, well, go do it, go experience. I think it's amazing. And it's also, it is such a 50-50 guess if you get someone who's good, right? And the amount of people I've talked to who go to a GP and get referred to a psychiatrist and they go straight onto medication without actually looking at the problem, and I'm like, what? Like, what? You haven't even tried, and you're going straight onto meds. Now I know there's a place where that is needed. If someone is highly suicidal, they might need that because it'll save their life. Jordan Peterson talks about this.
Just to help the chemicals to
absolutely.
actually, before you can actually do it yourself.
And that's why I love what Jordan Peterson talks about is his whole carnivore diet and getting off it all and whatnot. But his whole thing is, unless they need to, like, some people do need to go on it to save their life.
Yeah.
And as well as your environment's going to dictate everything. Because if I had someone come up to me and say, I'm highly depressed, I'm like, great, pack your bags, we're going hiking for 5 days. Took them out of the bush, swam, moved, ate good food every day, journaled, read books, processed some of their shit. I know they would feel better.
Yeah. 100%.
So it's such a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree. And it's such a touchy subject as well, because
We're not
that
doctors.
world has been so solidified and the white coat is so trusted, and it's not saying we don't need that, and yet that system is very predicated on find more problems, and then medicate for the problems, but not actually deal with just the basic life choices and day-to-day environment. And
Oh, but that's too hard.
But like, does it not?
we are lazy by nature.
Literally.
Does it not sound stupid though? Like someone's like, you're gonna be on medication. Like, I'm gonna call today with a girl, and she's like, the doctor said I'd be on medication for the rest of my life.
I was listening to a podcast where a lot of people in the States are on like minimum 20 medications, like multiple antidepressants, multiple different psych meds. And I'm like, no wonder you have more issues, because it's destroying your body, which knows how to balance.
But it's like, logically, like my brain can't compute this. Logically, you got something going on, and you're not going to therapy anymore. You're just still on it. There is something causing it.
Yeah.
Like it is not just a like I get your environment's going to dictate how your body's reacting and feeling. Again, it's your human needs. And for anyone that like goes like, yes, there are people that are born with imbalances and hormonal imbalances and whatnot. And I get, and there's different occasions where
I'm curious about the health of their parents when they created the human.
Well, there's these cases where everything is applicable, and that's something I like to preach. Is that I'm not trying to change your mind, I'm not trying to tell you something specifically, but look at the reality, look at the facts, look at the data, right? If you can balance your hormones fairly easily on your own, but that would mean facing your problems. That would mean coming at them full on and accepting the fact, that you might feel not good enough, etc. They're all just stories. They're just stories you tell yourself. It's hypnotism.
It is. We've been hypnotizing ourselves most of our life, right, with a story. And you mentioned trauma earlier, and again, it's such a broad thing. And yet I was listening to something recently, and I'm not going to be able to remember who it was saying it. And it was an interesting point of like, our parents and their parents were, maybe not our parents, but like generations before us went through war times, and they had so much to navigate through, and they would live off rations, and it was a really hard time. Like you look at now, like we're living in probably one of the best times to be alive in human history. We have everything we need, and yet we have higher, depression and mental health issues and all the things, and suicide. And it's like, what if this is our war? What if the trauma is, what if knowing that you have trauma is not like your challenge? What if it's your invitation to actually go to battle and like make this world a better place? And it's cracking someone out of that hypnotism of, I have a problem, I have a label, I have significance. Now people will coddle me because I, am not well, or whatever it is. So yeah, it's an interesting arena. And I know we could all go down a million rabbit holes with that one. Talk to me about toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity is the absence of what actual masculinity is. It's actually, toxic masculinity is actually an integration of dark feminine energy. And it's like fucking horrible with people that say toxic masculinity. It's like, first of all, they're traits and they're characteristics that we all possess.
Yes.
So
they're all within us.
The way, toxic, it's the kind of the feminist movement was a core part of what created this ideology of toxic masculinity, because at some level it was demonizing men who did what they wanted, like standing in themselves. Right? Obviously, there's a lot of bad men out there, and justifying that, but it was just, as the years have gone by, it's just a narrative that was started, that's been built upon, And Robert Bly was a famous poet that wrote the book I Am John. And I Am John is this story of the transition from boy to man, a rite of passage, moving from boy psychology to man psychology. And what happens in this world is women generally are, there's the old adage that girls are born a woman, but boys must become a man. And so girls go through a more natural rite of passage when they get their period. But boys don't really, nothing that, they get some hair and they get a bit bigger. But for the last 10,000 years and more, if we go back more ancient civilizations, there has always been a rite of passage for the boys of a tribe, you know, where they have to go through some initiation in order to become a man, right? And the first part of a rite of passage is the separation. They talk about this as being a separation from the mother, because it's the boy separates from the mother, and he goes out and he goes through this transformation, this change that forces him to step up, forces him to make a change, forces him to grow and create this new identity, like we were talking about before. Because within this new identity, he's more certain, he's more strong, he's powerful, he's proved himself, right? He's proved himself to the other men, right? And he comes back and there's this integration. Now that boy left his mother as a boy and he's now returned as a man. That does not happen as much now. There's, you know, different things in school programs. Like I got to go on something which was a rite of passage when I was 15. I wrote a philosophy about life. I went through some big things. Not compared to maybe like spending 4 days alone in the bush fasting, which I've done. But the absence of this creates boys that grow up and stay boys, have this mentality of boys. And you see it with gangs. A lot of young boys now just join gangs because they want that camaraderie, they want that tribe. You see it with football teams and rugby, like all the different sporting teams. You see that still with a lot of players and why they act out. It gets all the media attention.
Yeah.
So.
Or we've got the flip side of the coin where men are actually just leaving society, and there's all these little cohorts, well, not little, they sound quite large, of men who are just leaving the dating world, leaving the workforce, like holing up in big high-rise buildings and playing video games and watching pornography.
So true.
It's two sides. I think we kind of end up with guys that are super like nice guys, which is often more dangerous because they end up being manipulative. Or you got guys that just kind of fuck around and are confident, but they're confident in a way in which they're arrogant and, you know, kind of quote unquote fuckboys, etc. And you know, I won't stand here and pretend that I didn't have fun and do things like that as well.
Yeah.
But it's a progression. And so you just end up with these kind of core archetypes that play out. And you've got a lot of guys which are the nice guy and a lot of guys which are the wanker.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, obviously good guys out there, but...
Yeah. I love that. And I think whatever, like, group people are in or camp or whatever, because everyone likes to pick sides or camps, I think the core thing I notice is no one's thinking about long term.
No.
And that if I am in this group of men or women who hate the opposite side or hate whatever it is, like what happens in 20 years time, 30 years time, where all the people you're complaining with have married and had like all the men who ran the big pickup artistry movement back in the early kind of 2000s are now married with multiple children to like the same woman. They have a nice little homestead, and but they wrote a book when they were in their early 20s about how to pick up chicks and made millions of dollars, which made a lot of sense to me. I was like, this makes so much sense why like everyone seems to be following the same kind of program. But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on what would you say to men who have given up, like they're in that space of they haven't had that rite of passage, and there is a lot of noise about all the reasons why you shouldn't try, like
fuck the women.
Yeah, oh, women are evil. And then we'll do the flip side of the coin as well, but
for men that have given up,
yeah, or think that they, you know, because they've been hurt a couple of times and then they hear all this noise about all these other people who have been hurt. Yeah. Like, why am I even going to bother, like, finding love or getting a better job or working on my health or my finances or whatever? Like, what's a good first step?
Heal your trauma.
Yeah.
A first good step is surround yourself with great men. Yeah. So men's circles, go to men's circles, go learn from elders, go sit down and actually listen to the stories of men's lives. That's been probably the biggest thing for me is I sat in a circle for like 8 months and I just listened. I listened to the men 20, 30, 40, 50 years older than me talk about their problems. And I'm like, it's like why I'm so good at what I do is because I just listened and I learned and I watched. So go and learn from other men. Go learn from other people's mistakes. You can't do that on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. It's fucking
a lot of people complaining with no game plan on TikTok.
No game plan.
Yeah.
So do that first. Create, go through the hero's journey. Create a solid create a purpose is the biggest thing I say to men is even if a man's in a shit environment, if they've got a purpose, if they've got a mission, they will crawl over fucking glass to get there.
Yeah.
That drive.
And without that, they're like, who am I?
Yeah.
And you see it time and time again. What a midlife crisis happens when a guy retires.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I do now? Oh my God, I have to face my feelings. I can't dissociate from what I've been doing my entire life.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we've got the flip side of the coin where like a lot of women as well are in, like, we have been doing a lot of research around this recently, and I joined some groups on Facebook. One of them's called "Are We Dating the Same Guy?" And like, no. I think I've left the group now because it was getting too much, because it's just like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same in the men's communities that are similar, where it's like everyone's telling their stories, but it's in the light of like, what do you guys think? Like, what's your advice? But you've got a huge group of people who are hurt and who have, been cheated on, been betrayed, whatever.
Herd mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you touched on the community piece as well. I think that's really important, is get out of all the
Get
groups
out of those communities
that are focusing on a problem but masking it as a solution, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But for women who maybe have, I know that you and I have a very similar journey through this, so I thought we could talk a little bit about it. Is, like you said, the first step could be get better community and heal your trauma. What's your experience of that from a woman's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, similar thing for women. I definitely get into a community of women, and I guess knowing that each woman has their own model of the world of how their relationships with men have looked. So everyone's going to have something different, and not taking on their model of the world, especially if it's coming from a negative perspective, and creating your own model of the world about the men that you can meet. The other thing is actually just taking responsibility, because a lot of women, and I'm not saying this is everyone, however, a lot of women do not actually truly love themselves. And this is where it stems from. Because if you don't love yourself, that is the frequency that you're putting out into the dating world. And you're going to attract that in. Because that's what happened with me. And like, this may be a little bit triggering for people, because they're like, well, how would I attract in someone narcissistic and emotional abuse? Let me tell you. Let me tell you.
Let's go.
So when I was 18, I got into my first long-term relationship with this guy. And it was really beautiful at the start. And as the relationship went on, we got really comfortable with each other. I thought I was going to marry this man. We were like, that was the path that I thought it was going, and he did too at the time. And yet, what occurred was that when problems would come up in the relationship, whether that, even if I did do something wrong, which was quite rare, everything was always my fault. And I would get yelled at, doors were punched. There was a lot of emotional abuse. I got told that I was autistic, that I was fat, like all of that. At that time, I had little to even no love for myself. I had like body image issues in the past. I really just didn't have any love for myself and who I was. And I just didn't know who I was, especially at that age. And that played out in my relationship. So the hate that I had for myself, me constantly telling myself that I was fat and not feeling like I was good enough, I projected that out and vocalized that, and that's what I got back from him. So I want to challenge the people that are listening. Where are you being so nasty, narcissistic, emotionally abusing yourself that you're actually attracting in those people into your life? And to actually take some responsibility.
That's going to be a great reel.
It's going to be a great reel.
I want to speak into that.
Yeah.
The first law of relationships is that you can only be loved as much as you love yourself. Which, like,
literally,
it's funny that people consistently want. I get it from an evolution, from a psychological developmental perspective, is that, you want love from your mum and dad or whoever raised you, and if you didn't get it, you're going to constantly look for that validation, because it's a human need that we have. And that validation, I think I like. You've got two sides of the coin when we make examples. Is you got people that are struggling in that financial space, and you got people that are successful. in that financial space. And the people that are successful in the financial space, they're still wanting that validation, whether it's flexing, and you'll notice how it happens, because the guys that flex, they do it because they don't give a fuck. And women, but the guys that flex and they're looking for it, and you feel it, and that energy's out there. It's like you can feel that level of, I want validation, or I want acceptance, or I don't want to be alone, right? So yeah, it all comes back to your own of how you see yourself in that mirror.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and like, as much as people may have been hurt before, like, that we can villainize relationships and even bothering and getting into it, and yet it can't, when you can know yourself and you can have that foundation and you align with someone else, there's still going to be a mirror, there's still going to be layers.
100%.
Like, and
It's the journey.
You mean that's more?
It's
new
the
level,
journey.
new devil.
But like, when you can be with someone who you're both kind of taking that responsibility on some level, and you can just have fun and eat food and have sex along the way whilst dealing with the different layers, like how beautiful is that, and why would we miss out on that because of a little bit of discomfort? Like, and for me, I'd done, you know, I'd been single for years and years and years, like, not for lack of trying and doing all the things, right? And I'd had some beautiful connections, and I'd worked from what I'd learned in those. I'd learned the new layers of myself, and I thought I'd done it all. And I was in a relationship, and it ended up upsetting in the sense that he had been with someone else when we'd made agreements, and there was a lot of lying to my face, which was really convincing. So it was quite upsetting and confusing for me to come out of, whilst also in a community of like, cool, so how is this you?
Yeah.
Which was perfect, because if, like, I knew I had the tools to do that, but in the depths of that hurt and that betrayal and the mind fuck that is, you know, someone that you've chosen to surrender to and trust having lied to you, like, and, you know, gaslighting and all the labels that we could throw out, I was like, cool, I'm calling him this, a liar, a gaslighter, a manipulator, all these things. I'm like, cool, well, how was that me? And it was like getting hit with an atomic bomb, because I was like, well, I've been gaslighting myself throughout the whole relationship. My intuition, which has always been on point, was saying something in the background the whole time. Yeah. Like, I was lying to myself about a lot of things, like, not even about, like, the situation, but, and sometimes the reflection isn't in the situation that you're getting it from, it's elsewhere. I was lying about being happy and the things I was doing with my life, about what I was having to do, like, for my health, like, all these things. I was just lying to myself and maybe lying to others. And it's like, cool, if I'm those things, of course I've attracted a reflection of it. So I can't even really be angry at that because I created it, and now I get to work on that.
Exactly.
And that has just been, to be able to have that tool and that stack of something I could do that just felt, and there was, you know, this is why community plays such an important role, right? Because those deeper layers are something you don't want to admit.
Exactly.
But it's a game changer, and to be able to know, oh, I can get through that, I can be stronger for it, and I can attract something more incredible because of it. Yeah. With awareness. So,
You sure?
Yep.
I actually just wanted to touch on what you said before about people's perception of a relationship, and like, it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows. You're going to get triggered. Your shadows are going to come up and play out because it's a mirror. And there's that perception that your relationship is fine and dandy, the honeymoon phase, things that you see on TikTok and Instagram reels of couples together, and it's really nice music
Disney.
and the lighting's right.
Happily ever after, but they forgot.
And
to
that's
do.
great. Like that is part of a
two.
relationship. And there are the other messy parts, and it's all beautiful together that you get to be with someone who you're at your most vulnerable with, who knows you probably the most more than your parents do. Yeah. You get to work on that together. That's a relationship. Yeah. Not just the fluffy, fun side where you don't actually talk about your problems.
So what you're telling me is that on the next date, the first question is, tell me your trauma.
Yes.
Good. I love.
Or tell me your awareness of what, like, that can be a big piece. Is like, what do you know worked on from your last relationships, right?
The best question was, what's your relationship like with your mum and dad?
First date. Hello.
What's your deepest fear?
Well, it only takes me 5 minutes to read someone, so. I want to, give an example. I'm in my, first actual relationship of my life, properly.
Yay.
And it has been, the hardest, most beautiful, most incredible thing I've journeyed on. And this woman's a bit older than I am. And she's got her own trauma. And being in a relationship with someone who does have those triggers, but is aware enough to say, hey, it's not you, it's me. And to actually just say, stop, and have this conversation and be aware of what's going on and not walk away. There's been so much of that, okay, let's just stop here. What's happening? What are you feeling? And just communicating. It's funny that humans just have an inability to fucking communicate. And if they did, it would actually solve all their fucking problems.
All the problems.
Communication, when they say communication is key, it literally is.
And mind you, you can be the best communicator and still not be able to communicate.
Actually communicate.
Yeah, especially in the moment if it's heated.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it so many times with so many different people. And it's just recognising that you're doing the best you can, but you just being real and raw. And so someone, if you've done something and someone blames you and then they gaslight you, hun, you're in the wrong relationship.
Yeah.
Mate, you're in the wrong relationship. Yeah. If someone is externalising their projections onto you and not owning their shit, then you've got some work to do together, or you've got to move out and find a new place to live, which on the Gold Coast is tricky because there's no way.
There's a bit of a crisis with our
I van travel Australia. Just.
Van life hashtag. So great.
Some great content for our social medias.
This is so great. all the subjects have come through, and I was gonna say something and it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. So I like to ask everyone this question because I knew it would come to me, and it's kind of related. So the communication piece is really interesting, whether it's in relationships, in community, in business, and we touched on it a bit earlier about how the mind creates a story with little bits of information. And usually what one might do is they've got a little bit of data, they've already got a story in their head, then they're going to go to mum, dad, best friend, random colleague, and talk to someone else about it, who's then probably going to just affirm their fears or keep them in a protective space, rather than just going to the source and going, hey, I'm creating a story about this. Can you tell me more? And it could solve so many problems. And I heard an interview with a psychologist today who's become a dating coach, so he surrendered his license and he's become a dating and marriage counsellor because...
What? You mean to give good advice, you can't follow the guidelines?
Yeah, and he said that. He was literally, you go through school, go through psychology school, you go through the extra programs to become a marriage counsellor specifically, which is apparently quite extensive, and the whole way through they're just going, look, just get used to the fact that you're probably not going to help many people because they're going to come to you too late, and it's going to be just managing it until they eventually break up. And so he was like, this is not good enough. And now he's 3 sessions of just getting them to actually communicate, learning a bit about their own stuff. They come back and they're having sex, they're happy, they want to stay, whoever cheated wants to be in this relationship and commit full time. And it's so wild how just learning to have that difficult conversation can change everything. Is there any difficult conversations you guys have had or had someone have with you that spring to mind that were really powerful?
In a relationship?
In any context.
Yeah, I've been called out a few times, and that's made me have ego deaths.
Yeah.
Where I have a complete reframe of who I am and my identity.
I think I was there.
That was your crack, yeah. And I was like, you know what?
Fun.
Fuck you. I'm also a man.
We all felt that fuck you.
Yeah.
It was intense.
That was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I had was with Jenna, my friend Jenna, we did our breakthroughs in prep together, and I was going through a little bit of a turbulent time with men and just
What? It's not possible.
and I was confused with what I wanted, I'm pretty sure. And I was messaging her a lot, like most days while I was away in Tassie at this time. And I was like, this is all coming up and I did this thing and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm actually just not going to talk to you about boys anymore. And I was like, oh. So I can't talk about my problem
You can't
to
talk
the person that I want to talk about my problems to.
I mean, if you can't talk about your
I was like-
problems, they don't exist.
Literally, and she was like, she had said, like, I have given you advice on this and told you what to do so many times, yet you chose to ignore that advice and continue to stay in the problem. And I was like, oh. And this is why, guys, it's great to have someone else, like a coach or someone who can call you out on your shit. So yeah, there's been hard conversations.
And who you're,
like
I
that.
think there's a piece to be said on who you're actually paying as well. Because I think if there's no skin in the game, like I've called a lot of people out on their shit over the years, not even by choice. This is probably part of the Tom Pompey syndrome, but maybe wasn't that. Maybe they just got really pissed off. But I remember like things would just come through me, like what Jenna said to you. I'm just like, I'm kind of really sick of hearing the same shit and you haven't done anything different. And I know that when people have called me out and I'm not paying them, I've not talked to them again. And then the people who I do pay, I'm like, I'm paying you, so I have to keep talking to you and listen to what you say. Which is really fun. But yeah, the power of a difficult conversation, either way, can be a make or break.
Anything that challenges your ego is
Yeah.
great. But you have to be willing to receive that as well, because otherwise you
Exactly.
won't be able to move forwards.
Yeah.
If you're so stuck in your perception, that reality, really hard.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. What made the session I did with you so powerful? Because I haven't heard this before.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's kind of formed a lot of how I work with all my clients.
Amazing! I'm so great at what I
Did you
do.
do ECT?
And this is the ripple effect
I
that
did
is
a
possible.
version of ECT with me.
It was a very journey-like ECT linguistic adventure. I don't even remember what happened. And my emotions were very heightened in that moment. I'd gotten some news and some data, and I was creating a really big story of how unworthy I was because of this story that I was creating. And it was pretty accurate, but still, like I was making it mean something that I was this horrible person, and how have I possibly created this in my life? So the point is the emotion was really there. It was active. I could feel it in my whole body. And we jumped on the phone and did this process, and it was a bunch of processes put together in the end, and stuff that we all utilize and have had massive impacts from. And I think for me, it was because the emotion was so active, and then we did it. I was really able to go to the depths.
And
Because I had adrenaline, I had cortisol releasing, it was just all happening. And so I was like, I was in that discomfort of I never want to feel like this again. And so, and compared to like being like, oh, I feel kind of okay, so maybe I'll do the work, maybe I'll let this process work. It was like, no, I can never feel this again. It's been too many times. And so yeah, wherever we journeyed to, and I can't even remember, I know there was stuff about my mum breastfeeding me when I was a child and all of that kind of stuff.
It was just so deep. It was like, I know what I need. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, I
Tell me
know
more.
I need this process, and you were like, I think you need more of something else.
Sometimes we don't need just masculine processes that just are like fix all the problems. If someone's not willing to receive, they're not going to receive it. That's why therapy generally doesn't work, because you've got closed-minded or closed-off individuals. So,
and you've also got one side of the situation as well. And I think the potential positions that we utilize in our processes is so powerful, because going back to therapy just for a moment, like I remember knowing a couple of guys that I care deeply about had gone into therapy, and I was hearing a little bits of what was happening in their therapy, But then I was also seeing it from the perspective of like, the therapist is hearing one side of what's actually happening, and it doesn't sound like they're going deep with this person on their side of it as well. Yeah. And when I brought up to my therapist, I was like, well, if I'm attracting narcissistic people, how am I narcissistic? She's like, oh, a narcissist would never if they were a narcissist.
What?
And at the time I was like so validated. I was like, oh wow, cool. So I'm definitely not a narcissist because the person in the white coat has affirmed it for me. And yet it was literally just, and that kept me in therapy for another 11 months.
I can't believe
because
that.
It's so wild because of course, like, and I make content now where I kind of prod it like everyone's a narcissist because everyone actually is self-serving at the end of the day, especially if you strip most of their things away from them. We're gonna protect ourselves no matter what. We're gonna be self-serving pretty much no matter what, whether we like it or not. And yeah, it was an interesting journey to go on for that. But to bring it back to the process, I think to be able to to go in while I could feel everything that I didn't want to feel. And so now with my clients, like, and it's beautiful the processes that we get to use because you don't have to spend months talking about your problems and getting it all to finding the trauma. Like, it's just like your unconscious mind knows where it is.
Yeah.
And all we got to do is just go there for a minute to get that emotion in the body and feel it again, and as if it's happening again right now, and then let's use it to change it. And
Totally.
I remember, it took a while after that to realize what had happened, because I remember when I went into the master prac after that, and I was just like this empty container. I was like, I feel nothing. And I don't know what. Is it good?
That
Is
with
it
you
bad?
Before master prac.
That was before master prac.
Wow.
And then I went into master prac. And it was, I remember the first week of master prac, I was like this completely empty container in a good way.
Yeah.
And then I started second guessing and being like, what if it's a bad thing? Like, I don't know what to put in this container because I don't have a reference point for good things. And it was, and a lot of people, I think, experience this feeling start to happen in that particular training process. And I think someone said at one point, like, a few people are feeling numb and empty. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm feeling. And it's like, you just get to put good stuff in there now. And I was like, I don't, like, at the time I was like, I just had been told I had to move out of my apartment. I had surgery coming up, which I was feeling all sorts of ways about because of what had just happened in my relationship. I had like little to no money, like all the things were falling apart, and I didn't even have many reference points in the past for happy things at that point. So like, what am I supposed to put in there? What do you mean just put happy things in there? So I ended up calling everything off and going to see my parents for a few months, and my parents were the happy things, so that was really nice and a beautiful way to kind of round out this couple of years of like therapy, hate everyone else is to blame, you're not the problem, to, oh wait, I am the problem and here's how to solve it, and now I feel great.
Am I the drama?
Am I the drama? I think I'm the drama. Maybe I am.
Maybe I am.
And it's so freeing. And I keep quoting David Goggins because he said, when you go to war with yourself, you find an awful lot of peace. And I now know what that feels like.
The best feeling ever.
Yeah. It's like, oh, my problems were a choice. And now I get to choose better things.
Yep.
It's so fun.
It's great.
So, now I will ask my last question, which is what I like to ask everyone. Because connection and communication and leadership is what inspired me to start anything years ago. I would love to hear from each of you what leadership means for you.
Leadership to me means leading yourself. Is taking action and accountability and integrity with recognizing that you can only lead others as well as you're willing to lead yourself. And it's funny, I know a lot of people that do these leadership courses and go to these and like actively do the things, or go to a degree at uni or focuses on leadership. And it's like, you're not willing to go and actually look at what created you or what these depths are. Like, don't pretend that you're going to be a good leader if you're not willing to actually see yourself in that mirror.
Yeah, I really like that. I think something similar comes to mind for me when I think of leadership. I think of leading the women in Dr. Fit Wellness that come into the group containers, and it's like Lockie said, it's me showing up and being the absolute best version of myself, which means leading myself, doing the work on myself consistently and working on things that come up to be the best version so that I can lead them to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Beautiful.
Especially when you're in arenas like we are, and we are helping other people with their
Yeah.
own challenges. Like, we all know we attract reflections of ourselves, so if we're not dealing with our stuff, it's going to show up anyway.
My reflections are getting better.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
Yay!
Yay!
They're getting more fun. It's great. So what's next? What are you guys excited about, and where can people find you?
Well, we're building a business called Dr. Fit Wellness, which focuses on helping women integrate their career, relationships, find balance in their world. You know, you see so many women who are kind of between 25, 35, and their career focused, and it's like, well, what about the relationship? What about children? What about these next things? So we're focusing on women in that space. Liv is our amazing leader and heading that up, and I'm just supporting her, helping create content, which is going to be beautiful. So that'll be a really big business that we build. And
Yeah.
for me personally, it's just continually doing the work, doing one-on-one coaching, working with young entrepreneurs is where I'm heading towards, which is really fun and exciting, and then changing the world after that.
Yay!
Yeah.
You're already changing the world.
I sure am.
Yeah, literally building Dr. Fit Wellness, building this community of women, continually running our coaching programs and creating the impact that we want to create. And like, the more women that we impact, the greater these people are, and that's how we change the world and the community of women more specifically. But that's really healing the world. So it gets to be really fun and really great, and I'm super excited about it.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And where can people find you guys online?
Instagram, Lachlan.Mitchell__.
Mine is, my personal Instagram is coach_live_Gargioni, Gargioni.
I will put it in the show notes.
And then our other one is Dr. Fit Wellness. I'm pretty sure, is there an underscore in there?
I don't know.
People will find it.
Dr. Fit Wellness, look it up.
Search it
Yeah.
up, yeah.
Come join the programs.
Yeah. Click a few times and you'll find it.
Literally.
Amazing. It's been so awesome. This
This has been fun.
Super fun. We've touched on many topics, and
Yeah.
make sure people reach out to these guys for a chat, because there's many more where that came from, I'm sure.
Oh, so much. If you're
great
triggered,
future.
just message us on Instagram.
Yeah.
I will fuck you.
Yeah, come to the source and we will be happy to
Communicate and just come to the source.
Yeah.
If you like that episode, then make sure that you click here to check out some of the other conversations with my amazing guests and friends. And if you really liked it, you can click here to subscribe so that you get notified each time a new episode goes up. And you can click down here to share it with your friends if there's something that they might also like to know. See you next time, lovely.